Everybody, welcome back to the Standing Citizen channel. This is Bryant again. So in this video, towards the end, I'd like to give you a small little update on a few things with regarding Standing Citizen. But in this video, I'd like to just talk about several little things that really are relevant to what it is, we're all going through with here in 2020. And it'll all get tied together, I'm assuming. As of everything in these videos, I'm just kind of doing this off the cuff. So I did receive a text this morning that caught my interest. I do have friends that they understand my passions and they understand that I don't like what I see in America right now and we need to fix it. Some of them also, forward me things that they may find on Facebook, that type of thing. Well, I got one this morning and it was something that I hadn't seen and it was pulled apparently off of Facebook. Initially kind of smelt like it was, inaccurate or pretty much a crock. I did do some research quickly afterwards. There were articles written about this particular Facebook post dating back to March when this whole lockdown started. And I can tell you the two things that I noticed immediately when reading it were the fact that it talked about suspension of a person's rights to earn a living. And it also talked about how in 1866 there were 50 states, which is simply incorrect. You'll see how it just talks about how any elected official who suspends constitutionally guaranteed rights essentially is declaring war on the Constitution and they negate their authority. And, that is incorrect, my friend, okay? Because, habeas corpus that we have, unfortunately, for various reasons, it is possible to be, stripped from us. And that can happen certainly in times of war, times of peace. There's certainly issues and worries. There was laws passed. One of them was the Patriot Act, where they can come after people that go against the grain. That particular Patriot Act, I think there was a precursor to it that occurred in the early to mid 90s, and it was sponsored by some people that apparently are very important to our government still. Okay, but when I read that little Facebook post this morning, I saw earn a living, which didn't make sense for 1866 Supreme Court verdict. And I saw how it said that there was 50 states. And also I just didn't understand it. But, it makes me wonder what were the motivations of the person that initially sent that out? And when I did a little bit of research on the computer, I found a very large media conglomerate. They're one of their biggest newspapers here in the States were the ones who published this little article about that particular post. That particular newspaper, first off, I do not trust them. I will say that the concerns that I have are that the person who first threw out that Facebook post, are they trying to see martial law in our country? I mean, do they want to know what being stripped of your rights is all about? Because when we get to that point, guess what? It's your constitutional rights are suspended, okay? We don't want to see international soldiers in our country. We can fix this ourselves. We just have to put the players in the positions to do it and decide that we want it to be fixed, okay? And that's really what we're going to try to steer towards at Standing Citizen. But, the people that are spreading that post right there without even understanding much about the Constitution, and not to say that I'm a constitutional attorney or an expert, because I most certainly am not, okay? I'm just a contractor. But, I try to know a little bit about it, but we can't be blatantly posting information to people that we really don't have even the slightest understanding of what it is we're looking at, because that is disinformation, okay? But the motives of that person who initially did that, they need to understand the danger of what it is that they're doing. Then you get people that think that they can, go over and topple governments for being illegitimate or something. But we need to, anything we're going to do to fix things or to get them back to where they need to be, we're just going to be playing by the rules of our Constitution, okay, which is the right way to do it. Speaking of the Constitution, when our country in America, when we first, I believe we were the first quote unquote Constitution in the world. And what you'll find is that as nations have, come and gone, we've had some civil wars that have broken out. We've had nations that have disappeared and been split up. We've had, more or less what I'm saying is that the way of a government being essentially a constitutionalized government is now the standard, okay? Having a written document with rules, bylaws, order of operations, rights declared, all that type of thing. Now constitutions are, almost every state, I believe, has them, or almost every nation state has them. Our particular constitution here in the United States, of course, it gives us, several rights that our founders knew that it was important, because for various reasons. Now, prior to constitutions being written as a way to govern a country, you've had, kings, queens, pharaohs, Caesars, you've had monarchies, oligarchies, you've had whatever different name for pretty much a authoritarian government in charge. There's plenty of them, and I'm sure there's plenty that I've missed. But that was how governments were handled prior to a constitution. Constitutions are typically written by attorneys or lawyers, because one thing that is extremely critical with regarding a constitutional government is that you need to have laws of grammar, okay? Certain words, apple cannot mean orange. Up cannot mean down. The whole concept of emergency, an emergency needs to be understood what that term means, okay? A lot of people are upset that we've been in this state of emergency for a long time because I understand people are very scared. I understand that we have a health crisis, we have a pandemic, a virus, okay? I understand that. But, the whole fact that we're under this state of emergency gives, certain rights constitutionally from a lawyer's perspective, okay? And those laws of grammar, like I said, a constitutional government, it's written all right there. That's how you have amendments to the Constitution. That's really the bylaws of how the country is to be run. That can be great when a citizen is certainly involved and active, or those statutes and laws can kind of also just be written in there, and once they're in there, they're in there. Like the Supreme Court, their job is to interpret the Constitution. They're not going to sit back and say, oh, that is definitely right, or oh, that is definitely wrong. They're going to sit back and say, that's in line with the Constitution, that's not in line with the Constitution, and here's why. Okay? So that's why, us as citizens in America, for sure, because that's, I'm an American. We need to be a little bit more active in our Constitution and understanding what it is that it is, and really kind of, letting our voices be heard. And that's, what this is all about. Okay, the standing citizen thing. We're going to make sure that people's voices are heard. And we also need to educate a lot of people on a lot of things. And when I say that, we may have had, several things that, students may have been, misinformed about or uninformed about. There's certain things that we all kind of remember, and there's certain things that are important that none of us have any idea. Quote here, it's a short one. This is by John Adams. He's a framer of our Constitution. He's one of them. But he just talked about children should be educated and instructed in the principles of freedom. Okay, that's the simple one. Nobody can disagree with that. He also writes, liberty, once lost, is lost forever. With regarding democracy, he talks about that. If I started reading some of these other ones, there would be some people whose feelings that I would hurt. Pre-election 2020, I saw, several of these little Facebook posts or whatever they are, these little videos that people throw out there, little 25-second videos. And there was a young woman who was screaming at the top of her lungs, having a conniption fit in her vehicle, saying, "We're losing our democracy." And she was just going nuts, okay? And for me, I was honestly just looking at it and just being like, wow, what in the hell is this little girl talking about? I mean, I understand that we're taught that we're taught certain things. I mean, I see it. I see people that have no business talking about it. In other words, they should know the difference, and they're still saying these things and just implanting that in your head that somehow this word describes our form of government. We are a constitutional republic. We are a democratic republic. Democracy was given to us in three forms: the trial jury, the grand jury, and our ability to vote for our House of Representatives in the federal government. Okay? The senators in our federal government, each of us in every state, we have two of them. They were to be elected by the state's legislature. So once again, we are to hold the state's legislature's feet to the fire. In other words, they expected us to be active in what's going on around us. They expected us to understand who was doing the laws, who was making the laws that governed where we lived within throwing distance. Okay? They expected us to, because they sure as hell were involved. Okay? They weren't all just, playing video games and doing all that. That those people we were holding their feet to the fire, they were to be selecting the senators that went to the federal district of our government. And if those senators did a bad job in representing that particular state, those state legislatures would feel the burn and they would recall those senators. Okay? That changed in the 17th Amendment. Okay? Whatever. I'm not convinced that was a smart deal at all. But somehow, within our Constitution, they passed that. Okay? So that became the law of our country. Talking about amendments. There's a young man who sent me an email the other day, and he was worried about how a group of, I'm going to use the word patriots because I think that that's all that they are, which is not a derogatory term at all. I think that they care about America. Okay, but they got a little website that they set up, and they really want to make sure that America gets back on track. But they got a little, and they're sick of dealing with what it is that we've all been dealing with, and so am I. I mean, I'm not going to kid anybody. Okay. Within this little letter that they have on their website, it cites the 14th Amendment. And this young man emailed me, and he said, I'm worried about that. They brought up the 14th Amendment. And I was just like, what? That was my reaction to it. The 14th Amendment, I believe, pretty much gave slaves the ability to be respected as free men and women. Okay? But it also did something else. It created the fact that those former slaves, were recognized as free men at the federal level, and those slaves could not be slaves at the state level. Okay? So, in America, we have what's been described by our founding fathers as 3 layers of sovereignty. Me, I'm a sovereign man. I live in a sovereign state within a sovereign nation. Okay? The young man who sent me that email, that letter that I read on that website, I believe that was what they were referring to. They were not talking about slaves. They were talking about the doctrine that is called, I believe, selective incorporation, as was described, where those states that are part of our union understand that a free man in America and those states cannot have their own laws. In other words, if you're on the USA team, you're on the USA team and you abide by the rules of the USA team. Each one of our states, we agree to respect each other. We are all sovereign. We're dealing with, you know, how this ties in right now is we're dealing with states that essentially those people that are responsible for those elections, you know, obviously I don't think that they did a very good job in many respects. I mean, you saw people putting cardboard over windows and all types of just weirdness. You know, we're supposed to be out of respect. Okay, you know, getting back to the whole idea of slavery. You know, when our Constitution was first ratified, those states that kept those slaves as legal, they put up such a stink that they decided that the framers of our Constitution kicked that can down the road for 10 years, I believe. Now, some of those states, mainly in the upper Northeast, acted immediately and declared those human beings free men, as they should have. But some of those lower states, they were so invested and they were so worried about their pocketbooks. I mean, what do I see? All throughout, I see everybody, their primary concern is their pocketbook. You know, in many respects, just as those states in the South that were so invested in their economic practices and worried about any disruptions to their pocketbook, in many ways, I think that every American is kind of facing a very similar decision right now, whether they realize it or not. That letter that cites the 14th Amendment, it does talk about the rights of our citizens that are being really just disregarded. Okay. I mean, here where I live in Southern California, you know, I feel fortunate because we have a good sheriff in my county. And as all of you know by now, the sheriff in your county, very important individual. In the city of Los Angeles, there was a letter that I saw. It may have been more fabrication, but something tells me it wasn't, where a certain political power in Los Angeles City told people that they shouldn't walk outside. Okay. It's like, what I can say is, historically, your freedoms will be pushed until you decide that you're not going to be accepting it to be pushed. Okay. In other words, and you know, we can talk about philosophy. There's some great YouTube channels that talk about philosophy. Okay, I don't know if I can promote other YouTube channels or should. Academy of Ideas is what it's called. Okay, I suggest people take a look at it. Okay, you'll definitely learn about some things. You'll learn about logic, learn about Machiavelli. You'll learn about the book that he called The Prince. He talked about how, you know, you as a dictator, as a ruler, you got to drop the hammer every now and again to assert your dominance. Okay. You know, what's interesting is as this world's developed, you know, as of right now, the ruler has become these multinational corporations. You know, during 2020, we've had multinational corporations that have prospered like no other. But meanwhile, these businesses that are just getting ruined. I mean, this whole thing goes really deep, and I can tell you a lot about it. But it is what it is. You know, the bottom line is that we're going to have a recipe where we no longer have people to make dinner for us. And that's what's going to lead me into this little next thing. From November 27th till December 4th on Google and Facebook. $44 million. The tallies from Facebook as of January 1st and Google as of May 27th of 2018 combined is $2.35 billion. So you think about the money that is going on in these online communications for political advertisements. Okay? Huge amounts of money. Once again, Facebook from January 1st till December 4th. Google all the way from May 27th of 2018 until December 4th. So Google would have had, the numbers would have also included the midterm elections in 2018. But we're talking about just political ads. So huge amounts of money are being made by these multinational corporations by making sure that we don't cook dinner for ourselves. Okay? They are not going to like what it is that we're going to be doing. So be it. Cry me a river. Okay? We are going to make sure that we understand how to best get our respect one another, how to cook dinner for ourselves. That little analogy, I'm simply meaning everything that we're going to be doing at Standing Citizen, because it's so simple. It should be so simple. It will be. I mean, of course, is it going to be perfect? Absolutely not. Your guys' ideas are going to be required. I'm going to be expecting them. You know, when we're talking about the laws of grammar, as I talked about earlier, as I touched on, you know, as I've been working with my team on this Standing Citizen, even though it's primarily just me, there's one word that I essentially am going to, you know, throw the hat in the ring to get everyone's opinion on. It's a word that it has a negative component to it in the eyes of a normal, average, everyday working man like my grandfathers, my grandmothers, my parents, me. I mean, we just got to see what's going on right now, and it's really plain to see. We've had, you know, it's been kings, families, bloodlines, all this stuff. Now it's big corporations and it's all just about money. People are in it for their career because, once again, just like those slave states, when we frame the Constitution, they're worried about their pocketbook. So they're doing everything that they can do to, they'll toe whatever line they need to toe to make sure that their career advances. Okay? But this word is politician. The root word of it is policy. Okay? And there's a lot of people that when they mention the word politician, it has a very negative stigma attached to it. And what we're going to be doing is trying to create a competitive word or alternative word that can be used that doesn't have that negative stigma attached to it. Okay? So, you know, whatever, in time we'll get there. But all in all, the website's moving along. I've definitely changed my requirements. Things are moving forward. They haven't fired me yet. Okay? So we'll see what happens. You know, I'm doing this by myself on a shoestring budget. So, anyways, I'll let you guys go. Have a great day. Be safe.